Socrates said that he had a daemon, and by which he meant an internal voice. And he said that he always listened to it, and then that was what made him different from other people.
In ancient Athens, few were more divisive than Critias. Perhaps he is best known for his associations with Socrates and as one of the 30 Tyrants. A philosopher, poet, and politician, Critias stamped himself clearly on Athenian history. He is remembered more for his politics than for his ideas and writings. Despite his link to Socratic philosophy, Critias used his intellect to justify a harsh oligarchy that terrorized Athens after the Peloponnesian War. Today, we'll explore the life of Critias, his relationship with Socrates, and how he became a key player in Athenian politics during one of its darkest periods. Critias was born around 460 BCE to a wealthy Athenian family. Educated well, he became famous overnight. All other details concerning his early life are not documented. However, it's believed that his family relationships were crucial in facilitating politics and intellectual groups. He was Plato's cousin, which might have helped him relate to Socrates also. However, Critias was also a student of Socrates and a participant in debates that shaped his thoughts. Other than his fellow students, however, Critias employed those ideas to underpin some of Athens' most brutal political actions in history. Critias was known as a writer and philosopher before his political career became more negative. He wrote tragedies, elegies, and political works, though much of his output is lost to us today. One contribution he made to advancing philosophical thought was the distinction between perception through the senses and understanding by the mind. Even if not an original idea from himself, this distinguished perception from understanding for later developments of epistemology, the science of knowledge. Critias thought that people could be taught to be excellent, and that understanding comes from experience and thinking about it. Critias also contested religion, which later formed a significant part of his political views. He believed rulers had invented religion to control men by fear of punishment from gods to keep order within society. This view, quite surprisingly, made him one of the earliest known critics of organized religions. He said that the gods were just a product of mankind. This view differed considerably from the traditional religious beliefs in Athens, because respect for the gods played an extremely important role in public and private life. Although he was a philosophy pupil, Critias is primarily remembered as one of the 30 Tyrants. These pro-Spartan juntas overthrew Athens after it had lost the Peloponnesian War. In 404 BCE, Athens was lost to Sparta, and its democratic government was overthrown. The 30 Tyrants aimed to form an oligarchic regime, and Critias proved to be one of the most dangerous. His rule was brutal to an extreme level because the 30 Tyrants intended to consolidate their rule by executing political opponents along with confiscation of their property. When Critias brought charges against his former associate, Theramenes, he displayed his thirst for control. Theramenes argued for moderation, trying to balance the rule of the 30 with fairness. However, Critias was unrelenting. After a heated defense from Theramenes, Critias had him struck from the ruling council and dragged out. Theramenes was executed by being forced to drink hemlock, famously mocking Critias with his final words, "Here's to the health of the handsome Critias." Critias's political ideas exhibited his great hatred of democracy. He truly felt that a select few, the educated and the rich, should rule. Democracy is messy and susceptible to the mores of the crowd. It is, in the end, what Athens is. His view that a select few are better suited for ruling was shaped deeply by his wealthy upbringing and his perception that most people could not adequately govern themselves. These ideas supported the harsh rules of the 30 Tyrants, which wanted to take power away from the people and give it to a small group. The regime of the 30 Tyrants was short, but deadly. They lasted for nearly a year, but during that year, they are said to have killed more than 1,500 Athenians. Critias was ruthlessly vengeful, as he employed his power for revenge, and revenge also to get rid of his political rivals. One of his victims was Theramenes, his associate and an oligarch. Initially, Theramenes was a member of the 30. He started abandoning the violent methods of governance, and as a reaction, Critias had him arrested, prosecuted, and executed in an unfair court. This might have always stamped him as a tyrant who would stop at nothing to get and hold power. The association of Critias with Socrates has always been in contention. Many people who did not like Socrates used his connection with Critias to argue that he corrupted the young people of Athens. This finally culminated in putting him on trial and executing him in 399 BCE. His critics argued that Socratic ideas gave men like Critias the sense of justification to support unjust rule and political oppression. Xenophon, one of Socrates' pupils, later said that Critias had adapted Socratic philosophy to serve his own purpose. He made Critias morally wrong and demonstrated how he used his brain for his own good instead of using it to find the truth. It should always be remembered that Socrates taught Critias, but their relationship was not easy. It's evident in Plato's dialogues that Critias was not an important figure in Socrates' circle, nor would Socrates have condoned Critias' actions. In both Plato's Apology and Plato's Crito, Socrates delineates himself as an outsider to the political policies undertaken by his pupils such as Critias. With all this, Socrates' good name was already damaged. Critias' involvement with the 30 Tyrants made things only worse for those apologists condemning Socrates for victimizing Athenian democracy. The end of Critias came at the Battle of Munichia in 403 BCE. The Democrats, led by Thrasybulus, were exiled Athenian forces numbering around 1,000. They seized the strategic Munichia hill in Piraeus. Critias and his forces, bolstered by Spartan troops, attacked but were routed, resulting in the deaths of 70 men, including Critias himself. Democracy was re-established in Athens with the fall of the 30 Tyrants. What he did, at perhaps the worst time in Athens history, is what Critias is remembered for above all else. Ideas mattered less than actions from a leadership perspective, and he has always been considered the picture of greedy rule and oppression. His connection to Socrates also damaged the philosopher's reputation, as some critics claimed that Socrates taught men such as Critias and Alcibiades, another very controversial student. The life of Critias is clear. He was a man of impossible complexity. As a philosopher, he obviously discussed knowledge, ethics, and religion, and offered early critiques that would resonate with later thinkers. As a politician, however, his thirst for power and control spoke compellingly to how his intellect was utilized to justify brutal acts. His story reminds us of how intellectual brilliance can be twisted to serve darker ends, especially when the polity is going through any form of turmoil. Critias' legacy continues to raise storms for historians and philosophers. Did he succumb to the troubled times in which he lived, or was his cruelty a symptom of greater issues in his character? His life raises questions about the relationship between philosophy and politics, and whether the pursuit of ideas can be properly severed from political realities and governmental power. If you enjoyed this portrait of Critias and his controversial legacy, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more in-depth explorations of historical personalities. Let your voice be heard in the comments section below, and let's keep the conversation going about that complicated relationship between philosophy and politics.